Part 182. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1811. All the Feng Shui masters on the field looked at me with shock on their faces. This seems to be the 9 layers of thunder technique. 9 layers of thunder technique. Isn't that Master Su Tian's method? Could this kid be Master Su Tian's apprentice? I have long known that Su Tianxian has a great reputation in the Feng Shui world. But I never thought that Su Tianxuan's reputation would be so famous. The 9 layers of thunder technique was not Su Tianxuan's own creation, but the thunder method of Longhu Mountain. But what these people thought when they saw the 9 layers of thunder Ju was that I was Su Tianxuan's disciple. This shows that Su Tianxuan's reputation in the Feng Shui world has reached an unmatched level. I looked at the person who wanted to compete with me and said, "Do you want to continue the competition?" That man also looked at me dumbfounded. Of course. I can also use your level of lightning. I sneered and added the power of the 9 layers thunder technique again. I directly superimposed the power of the 9th level thunder technique to the 8th level. In an instant, the rumble of thunder resounded throughout the world and was heard endlessly. Thunder and lightning surged in the dark clouds, as if they were about to tear the sky apart. Not only that, the thunder and lightning surrounding me also became as thick as a bucket. Thunder and lightning were like dragons flying around me. All the Feng Shui masters present were instantly dumbfounded. Their mouths grew bigger and their eyes became a little dull. The reason why I cast such a powerful thunder technique is because I don't want to waste time here. I want to quickly resolve these irrelevant matters and ask why Lu Hangxuan and Mr. Ma are here. Oh my god, the power of this thunder technique is almost as powerful as the sky thunder. This boy is so young, and his conduct has already surpassed that of the heavenly master. How is this possible? He looks like he is only in his early 20s. How could Daoxing be so terrifying? I looked at the man and asked, "Do you want to continue?" The man was so frightened that he broke into cold sweat and his body was shaking like chaff. He was trembling and stammered, No, I'm willing to lose." I withdrew the thunder Ju, and everyone present let out a long sigh of relief. I didn't bother to argue with them, so I turned around and looked at Lu Hangxuan and Mr. Ma, and said, "Let's go, let's catch up on old times." Lu Hangxuan and Mr. Ma nodded, and then left behind me. I didn't realize that there was a pair of vicious and malicious eyes staring at me when we left. "We'll get to the previous room." As soon as I sat down, Long Shuang pointed at me and asked, "Okay. You said you are not a god. How could you summon thunder and lightning out of thin air if you were an ordinary person?" I looked at this silly Long Shuang helplessly. "Miss Long, I'm really not a god. I'm going to give you a task. You have to do it now. It's about whether you can save your grandfather." Long Shuang originally wanted to continue to pester me. But after hearing what I said, he immediately pricked up his ears and listened carefully. "Go prepare yellow paper, cinnabar, and a brush." I casually told Long Shuang something to look for. With my current way of doing things, summoning souls doesn't need to be so troublesome at all. The reason why Long Shuang went to search was because he wanted to catch up with Lu Hangxuan and Mr. Ma. Long Shuang wrote them down one by one, and then left in a hurry. I stood up and closed the door, looked at Lu Hangxuan and Mr. Ma, and asked, "Why are you two here?" Lu Hangxuan smiled at me and said, "It's a long story, Xiao Su. Let me talk about you first. What are you doing during this time?" End of chapter. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1812. I smiled bitterly and said, "I have experienced a lot during this period." Afterwards, I told the two of them everything that happened after Tishan left. Lu Hangxuan and Mr. Ma fell into deep silence after hearing this. The two were silent for a long time, and Lu Hangxuan suddenly looked at me with tears in her eyes. Xiao Su, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry, why did you say sorry? I looked at Lu Hangxuan with some confusion. Lu Hangxuan's voice was choked up. If I had been there at that time, maybe Cai Dai and Huaxiu wouldn't have to die. I looked at Lu Hangxuan, who was crying and was speechless for a moment. Thinking carefully about it, Lu Hangxuan has known her for a long time. She also has a very good relationship with Cai Dia Huaxiu. It is no exaggeration to say that the three of them are as close as sisters. Especially Cai Dai, she always likes to stick to Lu Hangxuan's side. To use Nadia's previous words, Lu Hangxuan is very gentle and will let her do everything. Perhaps in Lu Hangxuan's heart Cai Dai was already her sister. I said to Lu Hangxuan in a hoarse voice, Hangxuan, you are not to blame for this matter. Don't be apologetic. Even if you were there and with your help, I might not be able to protect them both. Lu Hangxuan looked at me quietly with tears in her eyes. She looked at me for a while, then suddenly stood up, covered her mouth and ran out. My heart ached as I watched Lu Hangxuan's leaving figure. I stood up and walked outside. When I came to the door, I saw Lu Hangxuan leaning against the tree and sobbing. At that time, when I talked about Huaxiu and Cai Dai, Lu Hangxuan kept suppressing the emotions in her heart. But how can it be possible to suppress emotions? I came to Lu Hangxuan's side and comforted her. Hangxuan, don't cry, it's not impossible to undo all this. Lu Hangxuan raised her head and looked at me and asked, Save, do you have a way to save them both? I nodded and replied, there is a way, but I don't know if it will work. Lu Hangxuan stood up excitedly, grabbed my arm, and asked, what can I do? Xiao Su, tell me, and I will do my best to help you. I hesitated for a moment and then said, it is rumored that the sky coffin can heal the regrets in people's hearts, and the dead can be resurrected, but only if I enter the sky coffin. Lu Hangxuan looked at me blankly, and she said in shock, then, doesn't this mean that you have to trade your life for the lives of Huaxiu and Cai Dai? I nodded and said, that's right. Lu Hangxuan looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, Xiao Su, can I go in your place? You can't die. What will Tianqian do if you die? I am helpless in this world, I will take your place. I looked at Lu Hangxuan blankly. I didn't expect Lu Hangxuan to say such a thing. I never thought that I was so important in Lu Hangxuan's heart. No, only I can. Besides, this is just a legend. I don't know if it is true or not. Besides, I don't have much time. If this legend is true, what can I, a dying person, not want to give up? Lu Hangxuan's pupils trembled slightly, and tears fell down. Is there no other way? I shook my head and said, this is the only way. Also, who said you are helpless in this world? You still have us, so don't say such stupid things anymore. End of chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1813. After a moment of silence, I raised my head and said to Lu Hangxuan and Mr. Ma, I have decided. Find the Dragon Ball. Use your life as bait. Suppress the future of the human race. Invite the gods to die. The gods of the tomb of the gods want my life. Then I will give my life to them. As long as I absorb the dragon energy of the three major dragon veins, I am risking the entire human race. Once you fail, your life will be at risk, the heaven and earth will lose their energy, and the human race will disappear. Lu Hangxuan and Mr. Ma saw my decision and expressed their opinions one after another. Xiao Su, don't worry, I will use my life to help you complete your plan. Lu Hangxuan said to me. Mr. Ma looked at me with admiration. Good boy. How dare you do such crazy behavior? Don't worry, I will definitely help you with all my strength. I nodded. If this plan succeeds, the human race will be fine. If this plan fails, life will be ruined. Later, I chatted with Mr. Ma and Lu Hangsuan about some things about the Long family. Time soon came to night. The Sisi Heiwan was bustling with activity, and the Feng Shui masters were preparing for the ritual. And I, Lu Hangsuan, Mr. Ma, and Long Shuang stayed in the room. Lu Su, please hurry up, I've prepared everything for you. Long Shuang spoke up. I took a look at the props prepared by Long Shuang and stepped forward to take old Master Long's hair into my hands. I squeezed the magic with both hands and chanted the soul-calling mantra in my mouth. As I recited the incantation, a dark wind filled the room, making the curtains rustle. Time passes minute by minute. Sudden. The hair in my hands immediately burned. I quickly threw my hair out. Long Shuang was startled and quickly stepped forward and asked, "What happened to Lu Su?" I glanced at Long Shuang and said, "Your grandfather's soul has been imprisoned." Long Shuang was startled and exclaimed, "What? My grandfather's soul is imprisoned?" I nodded and explained, "When I first used spiritualism, your grandfather's soul was indeed induced, but the connection between the magic and your grandfather was suddenly severed. The connection between the magic and the soul will not be easily severed, and the spiritualism I performed is not an ordinary spiritualism. But if the connection is severed now, there is only one possibility, it is man-made." Lu Hangsuan raised her eyebrows and asked at the side, "Then can you feel that person's aura?" I shook my head and said, "No." Mr. Ma asked, "Then what should we do now?" I pondered for a moment and said, "Let's go out and take a look. I have a hunch that the people behind the scenes are going to take action tonight." Everyone nodded and we all left the room. After leaving the room, I looked up at the sky. Tonight, the sky is cloudless and densely covered with stars. I stared at the stars in the night sky carefully, and suddenly I remembered the locations of the 49 paper figures. I frowned. This is the 36 Death Point formation. Mr. Ma heard me whispering and asked curiously, "What is the 36 Death Point formation?" I pointed to the stars in the sky and said, "Look carefully, what do the stars above the courtyard look like?" Everyone looked up. After looking at it for a while, Lu Hangsuan said, "It seems to be a person." I nodded and said, "Yes, it's just one person. Today is the Blood Star Soul Evil Day." The so-called Blood Star Soul Evil refers to the stars in the sky arranged in the shape of a human being. The Blood Star Soul Sun is very difficult to encounter because the stars in the sky move in irregular patterns. It is very difficult to arrange them into human shapes. This is thousands of times smaller than the chance of winning 1 billion in lottery tickets. 10,000 times. End of this chapter. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1814. I organized my words and continued, "The Blood Star Soul Evil Day is the day of death, and the prerequisite for death is to be under the starry sky human map. The starry sky figure refers to the human-shaped pattern in the sky. Whoever walks under the starry sky man map will surely die violently." Long Shuang turned pale when she heard this, and she asked me, "Who wants to kill my Long family?" I shook my head and said I didn't know. It stands to reason that it is difficult for the Blood Star Soul Evil Sun to appear, but it has appeared now, and the starry sky people map is also above your Long family. This is because someone has used their hands and feet to change the position of the stars with a formation. Mr. Ma asked from the side, "Array? Could it be the 36 fatal points array you just mentioned?" I nodded and said, "That's right. Humans have 36 fatal points, and so does the Starry Sky Man map. Look carefully at each star on the Starry Sky Man map. Each star represents an acupuncture point. There are a total of 362 acupuncture points in humans. The 36 fatal points in the Starry Sky Man's map are a bit off. To put it simply, the 36 fatal points have not yet reached a specific position. The purpose of the 36 death point array is to return these 36 stars to their proper positions. I stretched out my hand to do some calculations and said, at midnight, the fatal point will return, and everyone in the Long family will suffer disaster. At this time, Long Shuang suddenly said to me, Lu Su, that's wrong. Aren't there 49 paper figures in the yard? It's not the 36 you said. Although Long Shuang is silly and sweet, he is also considered smart. I didn't say that the 49 paper figures were the 36 fatal points array, but she guessed it. I looked at Long Shuang and said, the remaining paper men will have no effect on the 36 death points array, but after the 36 stars return to their positions, these 49 paper men will come alive and massacre you, the Long family. Long Shuang grabbed my left arm and said, Lu Su, you must save our Long family. I looked at Long Shuang and was slightly startled, his brows immediately knitted together. Long Shuang saw my expression and asked, are you unwilling? I shook my head and replied, don't worry, as long as I'm here, nothing will happen to your Long family. Then why do you have this expression? I smiled and said, it's okay, let's go. Long Shuang nodded and walked towards the courtyard where the ceremony was performed, followed closely by Mr. Ma. I stood there and held my left arm with my right hand. Lu Hangxuan asked, Lu Su, what's wrong with you? I looked at Lu Hangxuan and said solemnly, I have no feeling in my left arm. Lu Hangxuan's expression changed dramatically. She quickly came to my side, squeezed my left arm, and asked, don't you feel anything at all? I nodded. Lu Hangxuan's originally rosy face instantly turned extremely pale. Xiao Su, your 5 senses and limbs. I nodded and said, well, it won't be long before my 5 senses and limbs will completely disappear. Lu Hangxuan's face was full of worry, and her eyes gradually turned red. I teased, I mean Hangxuan. I haven't seen you for a long time, why are you so crying? Lu Hangxuan wiped her tears and said, I'm just worried about you, afraid that something will happen to you. As she spoke, Lu Hangxuan raised her head and looked into my eyes. It didn't matter. Lu Hangxuan was stunned on the spot. Xiao Su, your left eye. End of this chapter. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1815. I was slightly startled and asked, did you see it? Lu Hangxuan nodded and said, I can tell, your left eye is dull and gray. I smiled bitterly in my heart, it's not just the left eye. My right eye is also blurry when I see things. Just after I lost feeling in my left arm, I couldn't see anything with my left eye. I didn't expect this would happen so quickly. Cai Dai used her life to delay the loss of my 5 senses and limbs. But only a few days later, my left eye and arm were disabled. If it weren't for Cai Dai, I guess I would be a useless person now. It's okay, don't worry about me, I'm just missing an eye and an arm. I said to Lu Hangxuan. How could I not be worried? You still have a lot of things to do. Now that you have become like this, how should you go next? I shook my head helplessly and said, just leave it to fate. Lu Hangxuan grabbed my hand and suddenly thought of something. Yes. Dragon Ball Gathering. As long as you find the Dragon Gathering Pearl, absorbing the dragon energy of the 3 major dragon veins and the energy of heaven and earth will definitely restore your 5 senses and limbs. My 5 senses and limbs are connected to the Sky Coffin. Now that the 5 senses and limbs are slowly being lost, it means that something happened to the Sky Coffin, and my strength is needed to repair itself. Even if I absorb the dragon energy of the 3 major dragon veins and the energy of heaven and earth, I probably won't have any change. Really? Then we have to speed up. Maybe I will become a vegetable at some point. Lu Hangsuan scolded, "How long has this happened and you are still in the mood to joke? Let's go quickly." With that said, Lu Hangsuan took me and rushed towards the courtyard where the ceremony was performed. The yard was bustling with activity, and those feng shui masters were busy with who knows what. Everyone in the Long family was also standing in the yard. Now the person in charge of the Long family is Long Shuang's second uncle Long Yongchang. The entire Long family listened to Long Yongchang's words. Long Yongchang saw me coming and rushed over to greet me. "Master Lu. I'm so sorry." Long Yongchang bowed deeply to me and said, "I was the one who bumped into you just now. If you had told me that you were Su Tianqi's disciple, how could I?" I waved my hand towards Long Yongchang and said, "It's okay, I don't take this matter to heart." Long Yongchang apologized and smiled. He looked at me and hesitated for a while and asked, "Master Lu, you said that my father's soul has left the body. Is it true or false?" I glanced at Long Yongchang and said, "I made a mistake." Long Yongchang was startled and continued to ask, "Then do you think it is safe to do this?" I nodded and replied, "Sure, of course it's safe." Long Yongchang let out a long sigh of relief when he heard this. I curled my lips, be safe, be safe. Although I don't know what these feng shui masters are busy with. But I know there's nothing good in it. The reason why I say this is because I want the man behind the scenes to show up. Since the mastermind behind the scenes wants to destroy the Long family, then he must be prepared. In other words, what happened to the Long family now was within that person's expectation. Of course, I am an exception. If I take action now to break the trap set by that person, then he will definitely not show up. What I have to do now is let things develop. As long as things develop according to plan, then I can naturally find the mastermind behind the scenes. End of chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1816. Although I lost my left eye and left hand, my right eye and right hand are still there. This doesn't make any difference to me. However, I have some concerns. If it's my right eye that disappears next time, wouldn't I be blind? It seems I don't have much time left. Long Yongchang said to me with a humble attitude and a sincere tone, "Master Lu, I hope you will be there to protect me later. If something happens, you must help me. Don't worry, you are a guest, and our Long family will not treat you badly." I nodded and said, "Yes, I understand." Afterwards, Long Yongchang didn't say anything to me, and hurriedly organized the rituals. I stood looking around. Finally, he set his sights on a man. The man was about the same age as me and was Long Shuang's cousin. When I looked at my cousin Long Shuang, he was also looking at me. Long Shuang's cousin gave me a very strange feeling. His face was pale, there was anger lingering between his brows, and his eyes were full of viciousness and malice. Cousin Long Shuang burned incense for Mr. Long and let his soul leave his body. He is the person most likely to put old Master Long to death. But I don't know why, but in my heart I think Long Shuang's cousin is not the culprit. If you want to know who is behind it, you will have to wait. I turned around to look at Lu Hangsuan and others, and suddenly found that Long Shuang was missing. I frowned and asked, "Where is Long Shuang?" Mr. Ma replied, "I don't know, this girl just brought us here and disappeared." I nodded, and then said to Lu Hangsuan, "You go find Long Shuang now. I'm afraid something will happen when the ritual begins. After you find her, you must protect her." Lu Hangsuan looked at me and said, "Xiao Su, why don't I stay here with you, and you let Mr. Ma find it?" I shook my head and said solemnly, "No, you have to do this, if I leaned forward and whispered something in Lu Hangxuan's ear. Lu Hangxuan's face changed slightly after hearing this. Okay, I understand, be careful. I waved my hand towards Lu Hangxuan and said, don't worry, I'll be fine. Afterwards, Lu Hangxuan left. The rituals were prepared in an orderly manner. Just when Taoist Master Xianling was about to do it, Mr. Ma suddenly pulled my right hand. I looked at Mr. Ma and asked, what's wrong? Mr. Ma said solemnly, a figure ran over just now. Shadow? I asked doubtfully. That's right, a figure. The figure was extremely fast. I only saw a shadow. In addition, there was a shadow everywhere where the figure passed. It shouldn't be a living person. I frowned and asked, which direction did the figure run to? Mr. Ma stretched out his hand and pointed in one direction. I looked in the direction Mr. Ma pointed. You wait for me here, I'll go take a look. After that, I ran in the direction Mr. Ma pointed. The reason why I wanted to chase that figure was because cousin Long Shuang was missing. If cousin Long Shuang is the murderer, I must stop him. Soon, I came to a courtyard. At this moment, a figure flashed in front of my eyes. My expression condensed, and I directly used Nine Eyes Heavenly Domain to disappear. When I appeared again, I was already in front of that figure. End of chapter. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1817. I suddenly reached out my hand and grabbed the man's shoulder. I firmly grabbed the man's shoulders and pushed him to the ground with force. I looked at the person below me through the moonlight. I saw that the man under me was wearing a shroud, his face was extremely pale, and he had bright red blush on his face. This is, a paper man. I slowly stood up and looked at the paper man on the ground. Suddenly I realized that someone was deliberately trying to lure me away. I turned around sharply. The moment I turned around, thick black smoke rushed towards me like a tide. The black mist surrounded me in the blink of an eye. To be precise, it didn't surround me, but the entire courtyard. I opened my eyes with my hands and looked around. The black mist was as thick as black ink, and even if you opened your eyes, you couldn't see through it. I took a deep breath and slowly took a step forward. The next second, a powerful mysterious energy burst out from my whole body. The mysterious energy spreads around, directly dispersing the black mist. However, the black mist disappeared and reappeared out of thin air within a few seconds. What is this black mist? Could it be the kind of black fog in the ghost realm? Since Qian Qi cannot disperse the smoke, then Dragon Qi should do the trick, right? Just when I wanted to use dragon energy to disperse the black mist, the sound of Long Shuang screaming suddenly sounded in my ears. Help! My heart trembled, and I quickly ran towards the direction from which the sound came. I shuttled through the black fog and soon came to the direction from which the sound came. There are two figures in the black mist. A figure collapsed on the ground, and a figure was walking towards the figure on the ground in a very strange posture. I stepped forward and squeezed the secret with one hand, and blue thunder and lightning emerged around me. Thunder and lightning dispersed the black fog, and I was able to see clearly who these two figures were. The one lying on the ground was Long Shuang, and the one approaching her step by step was the human-made paper man. I waved my hand casually, and the thunder and lightning surrounding me condensed into a thunder dragon and attacked directly towards the paper man. The paper man was wrapped in lightning and was immediately chopped into ashes. I came to Long Shuang and squatted down. Dragon Shuang. Long Shuang was so frightened that he huddled in the corner, his body trembling wildly. When she heard my call, she slowly raised her head. Lu Su. Long Shuang jumped directly into my arms and held me tightly. She cried, Why did you come here? You scared me to death. I said speechlessly, Who told you to run around? Long Shuang said in my ear, yes, if I didn't run around, you wouldn't come looking for me, and I wouldn't have such a good opportunity. As soon as he finished speaking, Long Shuang suddenly took something out of his pocket and stabbed me in the chest. I looked closely and saw Long Shuang holding a dagger in his hands. At this distance and at this speed, there was no way I could avoid it. But, I was already on guard. Just when the dagger in Long Shuang's hands was about to pierce my body, a beam of dazzling white light suddenly burst out around me. The white light condensed into the shape of a white lotus and protected me inside the white lotus. The dagger in Long Shuang's hands just stabbed the white lotus shadow. She was slightly startled, looked at me in disbelief, and asked, "You? Me what?" I looked at Long Shuang coldly and said, "Are you surprised that I can avoid your attack?" Long Shuang backed away and asked solemnly, "When did you know about it?" End of chapter. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanbao. Chapter 1818. I was startled and asked, "I know? What do I know? I know nothing." Long Shuang's expression condensed. I continued, "I originally thought that the man behind the scenes was your cousin. Even if it is not your cousin, it may be someone else. To be honest, I did not doubt you until..." Before I finished speaking, Long Shuang asked, "You didn't doubt me? Then how did you escape just now?" I sneered and said, "I am always cautious. From the moment you suddenly disappeared, I suspected that this matter might be related to you, so I asked Lu Hangxuan to find you." Long Shuang said angrily, I have clearly thrown her away." "You did throw her away. The reason why you threw her away was because she saw your true face, but you don't know that I am her disciple and she can contact me directly. So, she told me what you just did." Long Shuang looked at me with gritted teeth, the anger in his eyes almost swallowing me up. It was for this reason that I asked Lu Hangxuan to come with me just now. Because it is easy to connect with Lu Hangxuan, and with just a thought, Lu Hangxuan and I can be connected. "Lu Su! You bastard!" Long Shuang pointed at my nose and cursed, why do you want to come out to cause trouble?" I glanced at Long Shuang and said, "Don't delay. I won't let you kill all the Long family. Although I don't know what your purpose is, I must stop you now." After saying that, I squeezed the secret with both hands, and golden light emerged from around me. I waved my hand, and the golden light turned into countless ropes, binding the dragons tightly. Long Shuang was unable to move for an instant. Although she could not move, her mouth was still chattering. "Lu Su! How dare you hinder my plan? I'll kill you! Kill you!" I stretched out my right hand and picked up both dragons directly. Long Shuang struggled desperately and cursed at me. "I'm going to kill you! You bastard! Bad guy! You deserve to die! Why are you coming out to cause trouble? Why?" Long Shuang struggled desperately, but she couldn't break free from the shackles of the golden rope. "Stop scolding, you should save some strength and explain to me later." Long Shuang didn't listen at all and still yelled at me. I don't understand why Long Shuang wants to kill the Long family. Is it because of someone else's instructions or because of one's own heart? Although I have only been in contact with Long Shuang for a short time, Long Shuang is a relatively kind-hearted girl. But kindness is kindness, but after a person experiences something, he will abandon the kindness in his heart and turn into a devil. Obviously, Long Shuang is now approaching the devil. If Long Shuang really kills everyone in the Long family today, then she will become a real demon. I'm a little confused. Why did Long Shuang kill everyone in the Long family? I took Long Shuang to the courtyard where the ceremony was performed. At this moment, the courtyard was in chaos. Those human paper men are attacking Feng Shui masters and the dragon family members crazily. Some Feng Shui masters are already decorated. These feng shui masters are all half-baked, and few have real skills. In addition, these human paper people are difficult to deal with, so they are no match. If Mr. Ma hadn't been here, these people would probably all be dead. End of chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanba. Chapter 1819. I put both dragons down. Then I squeezed the talisman with both hands and activated the heavenly secret barrel. 49 talismans appeared out of thin air. As soon as I moved my mind, the blank heavenly secret barrier appeared with incantations. 49 evil suppressing talismans attacked the 49 human parchment figures. The evil suppressing talisman is suspended above the heads of the 49 human paper figures. Then the evil suppressing talisman emitted a dazzling golden light. The 49 human paper figures immediately stopped moving. After controlling these paper figures, I came to Long Shuang and asked, "Tell me, why did you kill everyone in the Long family?" Long Shuang looked at me fiercely and said, "I won't tell you. Just kill me." I shook my head helplessly and said, "Since you refuse to tell me, I have no choice but to ask your grandpa." Long Shuang was slightly startled, looked at me and said, "Lu Su, you are very powerful, but you will never find my grandfather's soul." I sneered and said, "You don't need me to look for it. Someone will naturally hand over your grandfather's soul." I turned around and walked towards Taoist Master Xianling. Taoist priest Xianling saw me walking toward him and subconsciously took a step back. I said coldly to Taoist Master Xianling, "Where is the soul of the old man of the Long family? Hand it over and I can let you die more happily." Taoist priest Xuanling's throat squirmed, he glanced at Long Yongchang, and then stammered at me, I don't know." I held my right hand in the air, and Jingxiao appeared in my hand out of thin air. Without any hesitation, I chopped off the right arm of Taoist Xianling. Just hear a puff. Taoist priest Xuanling's right arm was cut off directly by me. Ah! Taoist priest Xianling let out a heartbreaking howl. "I'm counting down to 3. If you don't hand over Mr. Long's soul, then I will cut off your limbs. After cutting off the limbs, I will let you peel off your skin, and then break your bones. This is not over yet, I will torture your soul." Taoist priest Xianling covered his broken arm and looked at me with fear on his face. The old Taoist in front of me should have some skills. But he is a complete ant in my eyes. It can be crushed to death with just a little movement. 3. I started counting down. 2. 1. Just when I was about to shout out 0, Taoist Master Xianling quickly shouted, "I'll give it. I'll give it to you now." As he spoke, Taoist Master Xianling took out a small porcelain bottle from his pocket and handed it to me. I took the small porcelain bottle and didn't open it in a hurry. Instead, it disappeared in a flash. When I appeared again, I was already at the entrance of the courtyard. I suddenly raised the Jingxiao in my hand and pointed it at Long Yongchang, who was about to escape. "Run? Where else do you want to run?" Long Yongchang looked at me with a sinister and malicious look on his face. "Boy! Do you want to die?" I sneered and said, "Death? You still want to kill me? Stop joking." Long Yongchang's face was very ugly. He knew he was no match for me, so he could only stand aside and say nothing. I shouted to Master Ma, "Master Ma, tie him up." When Mr. Ma heard what I said, he found a hemp rope from somewhere and tied up Long Yongchang Wuhuida directly. Then I asked Mr. Ma to look at Long Yongchang and Taoist Master Xianling, and then he came to Mr. Long alone. I opened the porcelain bottle. A wisp of white smoke emerged from the porcelain bottle. I squeezed the secret with one hand to send Mr. Long's soul back to his physical body. After a while, Mrs. Long opened his eyes faintly. End of chapter. Sky Coffin. Author, Ching Nian Wanba. Chapter 1820. Mr. Long looked around blankly. What's wrong with me? I said from the side, old man, how do you feel? Mr. Long looked at me, looked me up and down, and asked, who are you? I introduced myself, my name is Lu Su, and Lu Linlong is my grandfather. Mr. Long was startled, and then asked in surprise, are you Lu Linlong's grandson? I nodded. Mr. Long struggled to get up from the bed, grabbed my hand, and asked excitedly, how is your grandpa doing lately? I replied with a lonely look, my grandfather, he has left. As soon as these words came out, Mr. Long instantly fell into silence. After a long silence, Mr. Long raised his head and asked, yes, really? When did your grandfather leave? It's been a long time. Mr. Long's face was filled with sadness. I said to Mr. Long, old master, now is not the time to be sad. During the time when your soul left your body, something big happened to your Long family. Big deal? What big deal? I told Mr. Long exactly what happened in the Long family. After hearing this, Mr. Long let out a long sigh and said, I should have thought that something like this would happen. Where is Shuang Shuang? I replied, outside. Mr. Long said, call Shuang Shuang in. I nodded, walked out of the room and brought in Long Shuang, Long Yong Chang, and Taoist Master Xianling. When Mr. Long saw Long Shuang struggling, he stood up and walked towards him. Granddaughter. Mr. Long came to Long Shuang and stretched out his hand to touch Long Shuang's cheek. Long Shuang turned his face to the side and said coldly, don't call me granddaughter, you are not my grandfather. Mr. Long's old body trembled slightly. He let out a long sigh and said, you are indeed not my granddaughter. I picked her up. When Long Shuang heard this, he looked at old man Long in disbelief. You're talking nonsense. I have a father and a mother, how could I have picked them up? At this time, I said from the side, you were indeed picked up by your grandfather. I knew this the first time I saw you, but I didn't say it. Long Shuang's delicate body trembled slightly. She glared at me fiercely and said, shut up. You are also with them. I shrugged. This girl is a mad dog now. I'd better say less if I bite anyone I see. Mr. Long looked at Long Shuang sadly and said, Shuang, Grandpa didn't lie to you. Grandpa indeed picked you up. You were abandoned by your biological parents at the gate of the courtyard when you were still an infant. I think it was because your parents had no way to support you that they left you at the gate of the Long family. Long Shuang still didn't believe what Mr. Long said. You're talking nonsense. I have a father. I also have a mother. But my mother died in your hands. Mr. Long said earnestly, Shuang, that's not your mother, it's your father who came to take care of you. Think about it carefully, have your father and your mother ever had any intimate behavior since you were a child? Long Shuang fell into silence. After a while, he raised his head and said, I don't remember. I was only 5 years old when my mother left me. You think my mother has a bad background and is not worthy of your Long family, so you find someone to kill her. End of chapter.